Why, hello there. How
Hello.
are you?
I'm great. Here with you.
Hey, I'm amazing. Amazing. And
I
if
didn't say how
you,
are you. I said I'm here with you. That's
oh,
why I'm great.
sorry. Well, I'm amazing because I'm here with you. So,
Well,
there's that. In case you're
thanks.
wondering who these people are that are here with each other and having awkward small talk conversation,
As
I'm
if no
Justin
one else is
DeWeese.
listening.
That's my beautiful wife, Ashley DeWeese. And this is the Life Unfiltered podcast. As you can tell by that
Clearly
rocky opening.
unfiltered. I feel like we never talk about what we're going to wear because again, we just set up and do this. We don't like
Right.
get ready for it. And
We just go.
this is what happens when you've been married and with someone for a long time.
Well, but so, I mean, let's be honest, right? Most people, their clothes are going to be like within a defined palette, right? Like it's not going to be the
I
whole
mean,
cornucopia of colors of the rainbow, right?
I am nothing but a cornucopia of colors. Thank you very
Right. No, we're
much.
aware.
Period.
You're like two colors tops.
Hey,
Anyway,
this is a new sweatshirt you haven't seen in a while, so I guess I got that going for me today.
that I was surprised when you put it on. I was like, whoa, we're changing up the sweatshirt rotation. Hot
Yeah,
dog.
I like to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, apparently you do a great job of it.
I try. I try. Do you know what's coming up this week?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things coming up, right? There's Valentine's Day, there's your birthdays coming up as well. But I feel like I'm missing something.
You are missing something. The Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, of course, the Super Bowl. That one goes without saying. I think everybody knows about that one. Not everybody knows about your birthday or Valentine's Day, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we shouldn't really say this week because this episode won't air until a week later.
It's this week for us, okay? Like
Yeah.
whenever y'all listen to it, understand that we're not talking about the same week.
Again, like I just want to be truthful.
That's how showbiz works.
I think about these things when I'm listening to people talk. Like, do they mean like when they recorded this or when I'm listening to this? So
Okay, anyway, what's
it
happening,
doesn't
my
matter. But what's
love?
happening this week is we are coming up on 5 full years of not consuming alcohol.
Oh, snap.
Okay,
Good
that
for
was
us. Virtual pat on the back for you.
I don't think the kids use oh snap anymore these days.
Well, I think you should know by now. I don't give two figs what the kids do and don't use.
That's one, not to like divert from the big thing we just said, but that's one thing that I do miss about teaching high school is I feel even though we have kids of our own, they're not old enough yet where I feel like I'm missing out so much on like the current terminology and slang. Because when I was teaching high school, like I was up to date with it, all the things. And I am finally starting to feel like a little behind the times. I'm still like hip and in it, but like I am starting to feel a little bit behind the times because I don't have teenagers on the regular keeping me up to speed on the coolest slang in
I
the
feel like my
college.
life is better for us not keeping up with teenage slang. I got
I
to be
mean,
honest with
maybe.
you.
I mean, maybe. Mine, not so much. So, anyways, yeah, 5 freaking years. Can you believe it?
I can, because that's how calendars work. They
It
just,
is. Okay,
one day after another.
you know what? You don't have to be a smart A all the time. Like, take
I
today
know I don't
off
have to. I get
or the
to.
morning off. Right. How
But
many
the
days
but
is
the
that? We were counting with
1,826. If I just do some quick math.
it's a lot
Just
of
kidding. I have a
days.
tracking app on my phone.
That's a lot of days.
That is a lot of days, a lot of hours, a lot of minutes, a lot of seconds. And honestly, like once you get past a point, and I don't want to say 1 month or 1 year or whatever, right? Because I
Right.
feel like that point's probably different for everybody. But once you get past a point of doing or not doing a thing, then it just becomes like truly part of who you are,
Yeah.
right? Like we've talked about. At first, when we transitioned from our drinking selves to our non-drinking selves. Like a lot of people like didn't quite understand it, or are you sure you don't want, are you sure you don't
Right.
want a shot? Are you sure you don't want this beer? You should try this. It's amazing. But as time goes by, like people, not only do you internalize that identity for yourself, but people outside of us have externalized that identity for us, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah. And some supportive of it, some not supportive of it. I mean, you know, some change with you and some don't, right?
right. And I
Um,
mean, I've never had anybody like verbally be unsupportive,
oh, right.
right?
No,
Like, I can't believe you're doing that.
right.
But like you can definitely tell the people that like get it and the people that are like, hold on. You're not drinking alcohol? Why the hell would you do
Right.
that?
Right. And I want to pop back to that for sure, like a little bit later, but we
Let's.
probably, we probably should back it up a little
Oh,
bit.
why can't you ever just say the thing without turning it into a
No,
dance?
I mean, I think it would be, you know, alcohol is like a touchy subject. It's such a part of our culture, right?
Right.
Like it's such an accepted part of our culture that talking about not having it as a part of our life, you know, it can strike some chords with people. And so, anyways, I thought that maybe like, you know, maybe we should talk a little bit about our drinking selves and what brought us to this point. Because I think for me, what I found is when people find out, I mean, obviously, like people who know us and have known us, like they know we don't drink, but people that aren't privy to that, when they find out, it's almost a little shocking because
Oh yeah.
we are so like inundated with alcohol, and drinking is just like what you do, right? And so yeah, I think it's important. I always appreciate when people are sharing about a habit that they have changed. I always appreciate kind of hearing, well, how did you get to that point? um Not just, you know, great that you're there, but like, how did you get to that point? Like, what brought you to that point? How did you go about making that change and all that good stuff? So, you know, our former selves did consume alcohol for
Yes.
years. When did you,
Quite a
what,
bit.
I don't know if I've ever asked you, do you remember like your first drink, like when you first had alcohol?
Oh yeah. It was like sixth or seventh grade.
Oh my word. Are you serious?
Yeah. Bad influences in my life, you know?
Wow.
No, I mean it's one of those things like um and not to throw anybody under the bus or anything here, right? Because again, for the majority of America, this is life, right?
Right.
Um, but my dad, in his capacity of his job, would have a get together at the end of the summer for all of his whole staff. And it typically would be at our house, and he'd grill and they'd smoke something or whatever. And there'd always be a keg or two or three or four
Yeah.
of beer. Um,
Which is
and that,
pretty kind of standard, right?
right,
You have a
right,
gathering, you
right,
have a social gathering, you're gonna have alcohol at it.
right. And so, then the day after, there's whatever's left of the last keg is in the backyard. And so me and my buddies would sneak a couple
Hmm,
here and there, and it,
gotcha.
went from there. So,
Yeah. See, for me, like I didn't my senior year, and I don't remember if it was prom, if it was like after prom, the after prom gathering that we had at a friend's house, or if it was post. I think it was after prom. Was the first time that I had had uh, a beer, alcohol of any kind. And for me, I was so afraid to consume alcohol because I watched my two older siblings um, take part. And I watched the repercussions of that for them, not only just in consequences, you know, from my parents when they got caught, but just kind of what that looked like when, you know,
sure.
they had come home drunk and and that kind of thing. So I was really scared. My dad's dad was an alcoholic. So it always kind of been ingrained in me that like alcohol was bad. Like, and my parents didn't abstain from alcohol, but they weren't like frequent flyers, you know, like they would have a
Right.
wine cooler here and there, but it wasn't something that they were doing on the regular. So for me growing up, like alcohol had the picture was painted that alcohol was bad and you can't do that, or you definitely can't
Sure.
do that until you're old enough, that sort of thing. So I was like so fearful to do it, which is actually interesting. You know, it's funny, and this is not today's topic, but you and I often talk about the whole like just parenting and are we doing the right things, and is that going to help our kids go down the path that we would like them to, and not like in who they're going to be, but just in living like a healthy quality of life type life. And um I think like my story and yours as well, like there's only so many things you can control as a parent, right? And
Right.
ultimately we're going to make choices, and you do the best that you can. But it's interesting because we can sometimes think that if we're raised to see something as bad to do or not the best choice for you, then that means we just go along with that. And for me, it ended up creating it ended up making me more intrigued by alcohol. Like I wanted to try it because I spent so
Sure.
long feeling like it was like this taboo thing that I couldn't have, and I didn't want to get in trouble for doing it. So by the time that, I went to college, then um I definitely wanted to try it because it had been like this off limits thing,
Right.
and I felt like I was um free from doing that. And my first experience of having too much alcohol was not fun.
Oh no, I mean, I don't think anybody would be like, "Oh, that was a blast." The first time I drank too much and yacked everywhere.
Right. Right. It was, yeah, overconsumption. It was very scary, actually. It was very scary, actually. But um, yeah, so that's how we got into drinking. And by the time you and I met, obviously that was later in life. And so it was, we were in the thick of living life the way that we lived it. And so,
Correct.
we had a lot of good times around alcohol. I mean, you and I have a lot of good memories.
Indeed. We
Not
have a
as
lot of
not as
interesting memories too.
interesting memories. Not as a result of like I don't I kind of now on this side of living life without alcohol, as you look back, like it's a little bit challenging to say like we had a lot of good times, not necessarily as a direct result of the alcohol per se. Alcohol was simply involved, and we have memories because
Right.
of
Sure.
um were they good? I don't know how to whatever. But no, like you and I, gosh, like we would go out with friends, we would drink. I think for me, alcohol was always a way to feel like I felt more comfortable around people when I was drinking.
Right.
Meaning I felt more comfortable with myself when I was around people and drinking. Um, I also felt like I could like I let my guard down a little bit. Like I wasn't so caught
Yes.
up in thinking about what others might be thinking of me. So like I let when I would drink, like I would let loose more so than I did without. And I think
That is
after
true.
spending some years talking to different people about, their views on alcohol and so forth, it's rather intriguing to hear how many people, that kind of is why or how they feel when they use alcohol, right? Is, oh, it like takes the edge off. I don't feel as nervous around people. I feel like I can be more myself is often what people
Right, because
say.
it shuts up that part of your brain that says maybe you shouldn't, you know? Hey, maybe you shouldn't go talk to that guy. Maybe you shouldn't approach that cute girl at the bar or whatever, right? Picnic, hot dog roast, whatever. Maybe you shouldn't try to take that cop's gun. Alcohol turns the volume down on that maybe you shouldn't voice. And so, yeah,
Right.
for a lot of people, it makes it easier for them to then, you know, interact socially or whatever. But the problem is,
It turns the volume way the hell up on other voices and
and
other things.
it becomes a dependency thing, right? Where you need to have that drink so that you
Right.
can go talk to that cute girl at the wiener roast.
Right. I mean, I used to tell myself things like, oh, like, okay, like I'm so glad I'm gonna be able to drink because if not, I don't know how I would talk to people,
Right.
you know. And for me as well, like it always or at least I thought it was helping me with nervousness. It gave me something to do. Because,
Sure.
a lot of times when I would be in social situations, I have like I'm very open about the fact that, I've struggled with like self-confidence and self-esteem, especially when it comes to like social circles, and definitely when it comes to like being around the opposite sex and whatnot. And so being in a social circle, thinking about, wow, like I need to talk to people and engage, and what if they don't like me, and what if I'm not like them, and all the things that go through your head. And it's
Right.
like, okay, well, at least like if I'll have this to do, it occupies me and gives me something to focus on, which, often led to lots of drinks being consumed because, and I would drink with a straw. So when you're drinking with a straw and you're nervous and you're using the alcohol to help with
Right.
those
It's a
nerves
bad
and all
scene,
the things,
man.
it's like just not a good combination. But, I think for you and I used to like post work once we got married, like post work Friday nights, we would, instead of going straight home, we would go hang out at one of our
Yep.
local establishments, restaurant slash bars that we loved, and we'd hang out for an hour or two, um, have a couple drinks, get a little loose. And, even then, I felt like it helped me talk and connect with you more,
Sure. Of course.
which seems so crazy, right? Because like you were my husband.
Yeah, but just getting married doesn't solve problems, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's that age old like, oh, our marriage is struggling, so we're gonna have a baby. Like, no, that's a terrible idea. Like having the baby's not gonna solve the problem,
Right.
right? And same thing, like getting married is not gonna solve the problem of you feeling uncomfortable and not wanting to talk to the other sex.
Right.
Like,
Right. Or like
right,
my own insecurities or whatever, like
right,
it's still there.
right.
Right. So, anyways, so we would do that a lot. And, you know, I think it's always interesting because, hindsight 2020, a lot of these things, it's not like we were recognizing these things in the moment to the extent that we recognize them now.
Sure.
Um, but, like, I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know where I'm
Well, I
going
don't know
with
how to.
this. I don't know. Help me out here.
So, I mean, when you're in the moment, like you can obviously alcohol can lead to a lot of really bad decisions, right? And we kind of laugh them off and like, oh, I can't believe so and so did this and that and the other thing, right? So like a perfect example, when we were early on in our relationship, we had been out, had some drinks. We came back here to the house, and my lovely wife went in to use the restroom and lost some balance and devastated a curtain rod, a shower curtain rod. I mean, devastated it. And like that's one of those things. And obviously, like it's not like smashing a car or whatever, right? But like that's not a good look,
Right.
right? But in the moment, we tell ourselves, we turn it into like a funny story, right? Like, oh,
Right.
remember when Ashley turned the bathroom into Haiti? Ha 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 ha, because a hurricane had just hit. No, that's hilarious. Blah blah blah. Instead of going, do I really, should I? And
Right.
we tend to
Why?
do that, right? And
Mhm.
but now, 5 years in, or we've done this throughout the entire 5 year journey. Like you look back at some of those things and like
Cringe.
that maybe should have been a sign that, hey, now's the time to stop doing it.
Well, and I remember, just in both pre and post kids, right? Um, you wake up the next day, and whether we consume just a couple drinks, right? Or whether we consumed a lot of drinks. Either way, the next morning when we were waking up
Right,
didn't feel that great. We were slower, we were more tired, we weren't as,
right.
the mood was shifted, that kind of thing. And that's
Well,
another. Go ahead.
let's just clear this up right now for everybody listening in case you don't know. Like this is not some sort of like saint approach. Like we didn't like, oh, we're having kids, we should stop drinking alcohol.
No,
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 we've been sober for 5 years now, and our children are 11 and 12. So
right,
up to 7 and 6, like they dealt with hungover parents on Saturday and more often than not Sunday mornings. So
right,
like don't be viewing us as saints in this at all.
right. So yeah, so like that sort of impact. And, I also remember times both definitely like the nights that we were drinking for sure. And then of course, sometimes the next day as well, but like just getting into stupid arguments with each
Oh yeah.
other, um, over things that ordinarily wouldn't have necessarily been any sort of issue.
Right.
But, because of the consumption of alcohol, because the mind is foggy, because it makes actually, you know, people believe or tell themselves the story that alcohol is something that actually like chills you out, calms you,
Right.
etc. And actually it's a depressant and increases your anxiousness and whatnot. So the very
Well,
things that
and
we often say we're using alcohol for,
right.
it's actually doing the opposite, which before I forget, there is a book that for me and for several of my clients that I recommended it to who have also been on an alcohol-free journey, The Naked Mind by Annie Grace was a complete like game changer for me in really understanding how alcohol works and what it's doing when you're consuming it, as well as just some of these things that we're talking about as far as like why what we believe alcohol does for us versus what it's actually doing, and just a lot of relatable things. It was a really great book where I didn't feel like it was preachy. I felt truly like it was just like, hey, like here's some information that you might not be aware of, but it was
Right.
a game changer for me in the way that I viewed alcohol. And I didn't begin reading that until after we chose to stop drinking, but I just wanted to make sure that I shared that here in case anyone
Sure.
was kind of curious about the process.
And we'll
Um,
link to it down
yeah.
below and whatnot so y'all can easily find it. No, I mean the thing is like a lot of people, you know, use alcohol the way you were just describing, right? To solve these issues. And the reality is like it doesn't solve any issues, right? It just
Right.
kicks that can down the road. And
Yeah.
more often than not will make things worse in the meantime.
Right. It's a
And the other thing
temporary
is,
fix.
right. And the other thing is that like, and again, this is sort of one of those hindsight moments that the reason you feel like dog shit in the morning after is because alcohol is literally poison to your body. Like your body
Mhm.
does not require alcohol in any way, shape, or form to function.
Right.
And so that hangover is your body processing out the poison, literally trying to keep you alive.
Yeah.
That's why you feel like shit because your body shuts down other things so that it can heal this damage.
And again, this is like anything that we end up discussing on this show. There's so many layers and so many things that we can
So
talk
many.
about. So I can promise you, this will not be the last time we
Nah,
talk
man.
about alcohol on the podcast. It's just kind of an intro for us, but it's become very it's become very important to me. I used to be of the standpoint, you do you, right? I used to kind of take on that idea of like, you do you. Like, hey, if
Right.
you want to drink alcohol, keep drinking it. Like, cool, it's whatever. It's just a choice that I've made to no longer have that in my
Right.
life. But you do you. But gosh, like the more and more or the further away we get from that life and the more we've learned, and not even just learned from like reading and consumption from other people, but just literally from our own experience of having
Right.
lived life with alcohol and then now being, 5 years into alcohol free life, I feel a responsibility, an obligation to talk more about the impact of alcohol, not just on you, but on the people around you. Like, I feel when I know something is negatively impactful on the lives of other people, I have an obligation to talk about that
Right.
because I care about others. And so, everybody's going to receive that in different ways, but I just finally have come to the position where I'm going to talk about it because it's too important to not talk about. I remember, and this is one of the things that gets me most riled up. And I think that, of course, taking a look at the impact of anything you're putting in your body, its impact on you is obviously like super, super important. But so often, what I'm coming to understand as a parent is making the consideration of how are the choices that I'm making impacting
Right.
our children? And, the moment that is ingrained in my brain, which is part of how our decision came to be, was at my 40th birthday party that my lovely bearded beau threw for me, at a time when we were still drinking. Um, I we have photos, right, of me doing a shot with my hands behind my back, surrounded by everyone at the party, cheering me on, while our two children at the time, who were, how old would they have been at the time,
7 and 6.
were standing there listening to all of the cheering and watching mom, hand behind her back, bending over at a table, grabbing a shot with her mouth, throwing it back. And we not only have photos of that, but it's like literally burned into my mind, that image. I remember seeing them standing there as I'm doing this. And this is one of those things where, like we talked about on a previous episode, that I don't give myself enough grace for. But it was such an impactful moment. When I tell this story at times with my clients, it was almost like an out of body experience, because as I was doing it, I felt this internal confliction, because we had been on we were well into our health journey, right? As far as like
Right.
eating better and working out, and lost a bunch of weight, and we had started our health and wellness business, and we were coaching other people to live a healthy lifestyle. And so, in addition to our children, most importantly, standing there watching this, I also had people in the mix that were my friends and clients who were watching this. And it was like this out of body experience, because as I was doing this, it was this conflict. Is confliction a word? Confliction?
Sure. Why not?
It was this confliction of, this is who I was, but this is not who I am anymore. But yet I'm participating in this thing that I used to do, but it doesn't feel right anymore. And it doesn't feel right that I'm doing this in front of my children. And it doesn't feel right I'm doing this in front of people who I'm talking to on a daily basis about living life better.
Right.
And so not only did I feel that in the moment, but the next day I just had incredible guilt and shame and embarrassment as I thought back to the night before and came to you with that and how I was feeling. And I felt so bad, because it's one of those things where I'm feeling so bad, and then I end up holding this like frustration and anger about how it went down around this very awesome gesture, that you had put together this party for me. And, family and friends at the time had played a role in like helping to put together and put on. And it ended up turning into something that stood out more so for not so good reasons. And
Right.
so it kind of overshadowed like my graciousness of what had been done for me, and just celebrating me that night. And that is unfortunate, and I hate that. But it's also the reality of what I was going through in that moment. And then the next day. So the next day I shared with him like how I was feeling, and why I was feeling that way. And
And yeah,
I
so
didn't know if you wanted to pick up then with like, because you truly were the one that helped to make the decision. I just said, I think I said to you, I don't think I should drink alcohol for a while.
right.
And
Yeah, something like that.
when I said that, I know at the time it was more from a place of, I think I just need a pause from this because I don't feel good right now about how things went down. And so I just definitely need to not do this for a little bit. It definitely wasn't in my mind like, oh, I need to give up alcohol for life. It wasn't that, oh, wow, I have a problem. It was more so a confliction of identity
Right.
and who I wanted to be in front of our children, in front of you, and in front of other people. And I didn't like the way it felt. And so I knew that I needed to just take a break for a bit to figure that out.
Right. And so I made the decision that I just wasn't going to drink anymore. Um, for a handful of reasons, but the biggest part of it was, like she was saying, that identity of like that's who you used to be, and if you want to keep progressing towards who you say you want to be, then like some of those things have to fall to the wayside. They have to no longer be part of the picture. It can't. We often trick ourselves into thinking that, oh, well, I can keep this little thing or I can keep that little thing. And the reality is you can't always. I'd argue that you never can, but I'm sure there's some sort of asterisk that someone can throw
Right.
on that. So we'll just say quite often you can't always keep everything. Um, and so yeah, she had expressed, well, I need to stop doing this for a while. And I had decided internally, I'm like, I'm just never doing it again because if I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna stop. So
And I think you also mentioned in talks before, because again, some of these conversations are conversations that we didn't have until,
right,
way far into not drinking alcohol. Like I didn't even know like this was his line of thinking, because at the time, I think what you at some point shared with me was like, you knew, in order for me to truly abstain, it was going to take you being full support of that.
correct. Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things, and we've talked about it with other topics, and I'm sure we'll dig into this on a future podcast, right? But it's like if she had a heart condition and needed to radically change her diet, and I was bringing McDonald's home every night, like that's not going to help her correct that heart condition, right? And so it's the same sort of thing, right? Like if she, you know, she decided she needed to stop drinking for a while, but if that turned into a whatever eternal thing, right? It wasn't going to be very supportive. It wasn't going to be very loving. It wasn't going to be right if I continued, right? And so again, we didn't necessarily dig into the depths of that conversation, but we sort of flirted around the top part of the conversation, I guess I'd say. So that definitely weighed in to the decision making. Um, so once I made that decision, like I dumped every last bit of alcohol that we had in this house down the drain.
Yep.
Um, and it probably would have made some of y'all cry, thinking of it. And
I mean, it kind of made
there's
it. We were like, oh, so you're doing it. Like, there
well,
goes
there,
a hundred
no, it
dollars. There goes.
didn't
You
bother
didn't
me
for
at
you.
all. That
No.
I had the thought of like, yeah, well, there goes $40, there goes 50.
Right.
No, 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 no. But realistically, if you look at it, like I was just gonna dump that down my throat and turn it into piss or vomit anyway. So like the
Right.
money's
What?
wasted. Like
Yeah. And
anyway,
that's another thing that, and I don't want to go a new, I
no,
don't
you're
want
fine.
to, okay. Um, that's another component of this, of our learnings, is like the amount of money that we were dropping on alcohol while
Right.
simultaneously saying things to ourselves and to our kids of like, oh, well, we can't afford that, or we don't have the money to spend on that, or we're not going to spend that. But we were, every single weekend, whether it was just us going out or whether, we were going out to dinner as a family and having like a couple drinks or whatever, like we were dropping
100,
$100 or more
$200.
dollars
Right.
almost every weekend on alcohol. And that was never like, okay.
But let me tell you, like if you're kind of on the fence about drinking alcohol and maybe you want to stop, but you're not really sure, the next time you go out to eat with your family, just have everybody not drink at that one and then compare the check and you'll be like, yeah, holy shit, I'm doing that. I'm
Right.
because our meals out went from 120, 130 to
60.
60
Right. Like, oh, why didn't
just
we do
because we
this a
weren't
lot
having a couple
earlier?
drinks.
Right.
So
And this is just kind of a potpourri of our thoughts and of, things we've gone through, but um it's been interesting. It's been interesting to see, the social ramifications of not drinking. And I think, you know, those are things that definitely with some of my clients who have been working to go alcohol free in their early stages, a major concern is like, how does this change my relationship with the people
sure,
around me? And, obviously we weren't thinking about that when we made the decision to stop drinking for a while, which, like I said, I was thinking like we were just stopping for a while when you knew all along, like you were done. You
correct.
weren't necessarily saying we were done drinking alcohol, but like I thought at some point maybe we would probably resume. Until one day we were having a conversation and he was like, no, I'm done for good. And, as we've shared on here, this is same team kind of thing. So, oh, you're done for good. Okay. So we're done for good. But, that fear
Well,
of how
and
it's going to
and
change. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, just to be clear, real quick, like this isn't a 1950s household where like I beat her with a belt and said, "This is the decision we're making." Like
No.
she weighed it against her own wants,
Right.
desires, identity, blah blah blah, and said, "You know what? That is the right decision to make." So,
Right.
like, I just wanted to clarify that real quick.
Right. Um, but yeah, people wonder how it's going to change their relationships, and rightly so.
Sure.
Anytime we make a change in our life, anytime we make a decision to start living life differently than we have been, we are opening ourselves up to the risk of people in our life not being on that same page, not being supportive or not understanding, trying to convince you otherwise. I mean, the
Right.
degrees vary. And that can be challenging. And like we said on a previous call, or podcast, like you have to make the decision, you know, do you want to be living your life based upon what other people want you to do? Or do you want to be living your life based upon what you know you need to do for the best
Right.
version of you? It's not easy, but you have to choose you. You
Right.
have to choose you. And the others, they will figure out. And as cheesy as this phrase is, it is truth that when people are upset or offended by choices that you're making that are in the best interest of you and your personal well-being and growth, that has more to do with them
Right.
than it has to do with you. And
Right.
that is challenging because we as a people, we we need to feel connected. We need to feel loved. We need to feel connected. We want to feel accepted. And so when we make decisions that other people don't seem to be on board with, we start questioning ourselves. And in fact, what we need to be doing is questioning or getting curious about them, that
Right.
if they're not okay with this, then it's more so about them. But that's part of the process. And I don't believe that we ever had any, like you've said, like we've never experienced any sort of like outright, people in our face or loved ones like this is ridiculous sort of thing.
Right.
um definitely experienced like some, you know, some pushback, some razzing, if you will, at times when, you know, we're not drinking and others are. Because again, people know you as you have been.
Right.
And people, like, you teach people how to be in a relationship with you. You teach people how to interact with you. So when you go and like change that up, you also have to understand
Right.
that this is new for them too, that they don't, you know, if your buddy knows you, you know, as the one that he can always call up and we'll go out to the bar and we'll, you know, drink a 30 pack and like whatever, and now all of a sudden you're not doing that anymore.
Right.
You also have to understand that for him, like, this is new, and now he's also going, how am I, how do we continue to be friends when a lot of what this friendship was based upon was this particular
Right.
activity? So
Right.
it's just as, it change is just as difficult for people in your life as it is for you as the one making that change.
But the moral of the story, as we wrap this up for today, because we've been going for
Oh,
40
there's
minutes, and
so much. So I
I
know,
know
I
the thing
know.
is we could go for hours and hours, right? The moral of the story is you need to be able to take a sober and honest look at your life and decide what does and doesn't belong in your life, regardless of what other people think about it, because they will always have opinions and they're not always in your best interest. So,
And it can be as simple as just taking a beat with yourself to simply ask, what are the things that I'm currently doing in my life that aren't bringing me joy,
right,
that aren't helping my pocketbook, that aren't helping me to get closer to the person that I want to be, to the life that I want to have? You know, what are the things in my life? What are the things that I'm doing in my life or not doing in my life that actually is like bringing negativity into my life? It's actually
right,
creating negative consequences for me in my life. And again, you have to be willing to get honest with yourself, because we like to kind of like we like to focus on the, what we have deemed as positives of some of these choices and behaviors, but really getting honest and say, hey, like you said, like, is this really serving me? And you know, you always, when you talk about this to other people, like, you always share like there were more negatives
right,
in your life from drinking than there were
right,
what you deemed as benefits. And so it's
right,
weighing like the cost of that choice, and is it really worth continuing? And again, when we live in a world where alcohol is in our face 24/7, like,
constantly
even if you take the step of, after you listen to this, like, just spend the next couple of days paying
pay attention.
attention to how many times you see or hear a reference to alcohol in music, in media, with your circle, and
Right,
you will be like, oh my word. Because we just kind of do that autopilot pilot thing, right? Where stuff's just flying by us all the time and we're just not even paying attention because it's like such the norm. So
right,
it is, it does have to be an intentional choice to step out of the matrix, if you will, for a little bit, and evaluate this for yourself. But remember, just because it's deemed as normal by society, or accepted and okay by society, doesn't mean that it is, or it
right,
doesn't mean that it is for you. And you must give yourself permission to do things differently than what everyone else is doing. And it's so, that phrase itself, when you think about being an adult and how many things in our life that people, ourselves included at times, have done, do. I said
uh,
do because that's what everyone else is doing.
right,
It's appalling, right? But we do that as adults, and it's time that we are able to grab the keys to our own life and be able to look around and say, it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. is this actually serving myself and who I want to be and the goals that I have in the life that I want to live? Is it actually serving it well? Or is it actually holding me back from who I want to be and everything I want for my life? And for us, we have found that alcohol was doing just that for us as individuals, for us as a couple, and then for our children. And so I feel like, of course, taking control of our health via weight and nutrition was one of the most powerful decisions that we've made. But making the decision to stop drinking alcohol forever is a decision that I don't know that I would have made on my own. So thank you for
You're welcome.
helping us make that decision and for your love and care for me in being supportive of what I was sharing I needed at the time, but you having the vision of what we needed long term, because our life is so different. I feel so different. And for our kids, I believe their upbringing is going so differently than it would have had we continued to drink alcohol. And I hope and pray, despite, you know, ultimately them being able to make their own decisions as they continue to grow, I hope that seeing them seeing us model life with drinking and then life without drinking, I just hope that that has the kind of positive impact on them for a lifetime, um, that I hope that it does. So, anywho,
Agreed. Yeah. And so, just in closing, I just want to say we're not counselors, right? We're not trained in practically
nothing.
anything. But if you are considering this journey or want to consider this journey or whatever, don't hesitate to reach out to us, right? Because we do have some tools and resources we can point you to. We can talk you through more in depth our journey and whatnot. So, leave a comment, shoot us a message on any of the platforms that you can find us on, because you're worth it, right?
Yeah,
You're worth making those decisions that are in your best long-term interest.
and you're worth taking the time just to give it some thought.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have to
Right.
be a complete 360 right off the bat. You know, just get curious about it. Start
Right.
there. And yeah, like Justin said, like we're here to just share and talk and help and be a resource in any way that we can, because no matter where you're at in life, no matter what you've experienced, no matter how old you are or how young you are, it's always the right time to make a decision to move you in a better direction than where you are now. And if we can help you with that in any way, we would absolutely love to. So,
Absolutely.
with that, again, thank you for listening. If you're benefiting and getting value out of these shows that we're doing, make sure you're clicking the subscribe button, signing up
Like,
for
comment,
whatever
subscribe,
we have,
share, all
whatever
the
the
things.
things. And if you want more content from us like this, you can check out both of our Instagram pages or our website, our YouTube channel. Everything is linked in the description of this show. But thank you guys so much, and we will be back with you next week.
Peace. I got anything to say this week. I'm just tired of always being left alone.